The last piece of the jigsaw falls into place here, opposite the bright lights of modern Stockholm.
Tula had this stone raised in memory of her son, the brother of Ingvar.
The runic text makes a now familiar mercenary reference.
In the east, they gave the eagle. That means they gave the eagle food, which in turn means they killed enemies. Enemies which could lie in the field and the eagle could come and eat them. That's the Viking poetry.
But then the runes reveal how the successful mercenaries met an unnamed fate on the shores of the Caspian Sea.
And then it's a new sentence. They died south in Serkland.
As to what ultimately claimed the lives of Ingvar and his followers, the stones are silent. But a later anecdotal account does give a likely explanation.
There is also an Icelandic saga, which is written in the 13th century, and it's telling about sort of plague coming to the expedition and killing Ingvar himself and most of the other members.
Perhaps Ingvar's expedition fell not to war, but to disease. Whatever the cause, Ingvar's demise on the shore of the Caspian Sea marks the end of large-scale Viking mercenary adventures in the East. Even before the Ingvar catastrophe, more and more Viking warriors had abandoned their mercenary activities. In a rapidly changing world, they had returned to their favorite and original occupation, raiding. But their victims this time were not foreigners, they were other Vikings. Swedish archaeologist Lena Holmquist Olausson has found a spot that symbolizes the disintegration of Viking society during the 10th century. On the lake that runs west from the Swedish capital of Stockholm lies the remains of a wealthy Viking port, Birka. Today, the site is very hard to reach, but in the 10th century, Birka, like Gotland, was a major trading outlet to the east. Archaeologists have long known of Birka's existence, but Olausson has found something which indicates more than a civilian presence on the island. The remains of a barracks and fort that housed a full-time warrior garrison.
The hill fort is one of the few monumental buildings what we have from the Viking age, and the construction was all about 700 meters long and about 1,000 meters of wooden construction. It was a huge engineer work.
Given its location in the heart of Scandinavia, the threat facing Birka must have come from one source only: renegade Vikings. The fearful merchants had hired mercenaries of their own for protection. Coming up, the ultimate expression of the Vikings' defensive trend. Trelleborg. It is a fortress only raiders by design could engineer. Secrets of the Viking warriors in a moment. Now, back to Secrets of the Viking Warriors on the National Geographic Channel. At her lab in Stockholm University, Olausson and her team are using high-tech forensic techniques to piece together life in the Birka garrison. Study of the remains of weapons and clothes reveal the soldiers had spent time in the East, a strong indication of their mercenary pedigree.
Parts of the uniforms are typical objects that they brought back from Eastern parts. Some of the weapons, some of the arrowheads that we find are typical for Eastern countries. And of course coins, lots of coins. Almost all the coins from the garrison are Islamic coins.
The warriors of Birka, their task was to protect Birka from attacks from sea-born warriors.
The wealthy traders of Birka were right to fear an assault on their town. In 970 AD, the garrison disappeared and Birka was abandoned.
What we think happened at last at a garrison, that it was an attack coming from the sea.
Birka fell to a classic seaborne attack. The very tactic that had brought Vikings wealth in the first place was now being used against them. The split in Viking society was now almost complete. By the end of the 10th century, the rulers of the Viking world found themselves devoting enormous resources to protecting their lands from competing groups of hostile Viking warriors. The ultimate expression of this defensive trend is the Danish fortress at Trelleborg, an extraordinary feat of civil engineering.
Trelleborg is very impressive. It's a circular banked enclosure 150 yards across, essentially the area of 12 soccer pitches inside. It's a testament to the Viking Age ability at construction and engineering to create such forts which hadn't been seen since Roman times.
Astonishingly, Trelleborg is not unique. It's part of a defensive chain designed to protect Viking Denmark from other Vikings. Fortresses like Trelleborg demonstrate how much the Viking world was unraveling and how great a threat warriors of the old school had become to the new Viking order.
Conquering large areas of Western Europe brought them into contact with the structures of kingship in Western Europe to such a degree that they adopted them, and Scandinavia in fact did become absorbed into the wider European community of that time.
Rulers like Harald Bluetooth, who may have built Trelleborg, no longer won power at the point of a sword, but by right of birth. As kings collected taxes, they made laws. They were no longer warlords. They were landlords. For many Viking warrior chieftains, it was too much. Loners with names like Eric the Red, Egil Skallagrimsson, and Leif Erikson decided to leave home and head west into the unknown. The evolution of the Vikings was about to enter its final phase. In just 2 centuries, they had grown from raiders to invaders to international traders. Now a group of independent-minded warriors was to embark on a huge gamble, the exploration and settlement of a new continent. As the Viking Age drew to a close, one last great adventure was about to begin. Legend has it that in 1000 AD, some 500 years before Columbus, the Vikings reached America. It's a fantastic claim. For many years, few historians believed it could be true, not least because it was based on anecdotal evidence. Medieval sagas written by the Vikings' Icelandic descendants. If the Vikings had reached America, why had they left behind no physical trace of their existence? True, there was evidence of a progressive wave of transatlantic Viking settlement. By 900 AD, Vikings were living on Iceland. By 980, Vikings were sailing from Iceland to the southeastern coast of Greenland. It would only take one further step to reach the coast of North America. But that step was a giant leap of nearly 600 miles. Across one of the roughest seas in the world, the North Atlantic. How could Viking ships and Viking crews sail in waters such as these? How would they find their way? Modern ships navigate by using satellite-based global positioning systems. These can tell the skipper precisely where he is in relation to his destination at any time, day or night, no matter what the weather. The Vikings, of course, had no access to technology like this. So what are the secrets of Viking navigation? This object may hold a clue. Archaeologists call it a sun compass. Its design is based on an object discovered in Greenland nearly 60 years ago.
In 1948, there was made a find in Greenland, and this find was a little disc, and on this disc was incised some lines. You can see there's a curved line, and that's what we call a gnomon line. And the trick of the compass is that when you just land this sharp tip of the shadow on the curve, then you have a true compass.
Simple, yet effective. But the compass only works when it's sunny. What happens if there is no sun? The sagas had an answer. They tell of magic sunstones that guided Vikings through bad weather by emitting strange colors. Incredible, but was it true?